I was asked to present yesterday at around about 10 o'clock. So what I've put together is, I suppose it's like it's more like a sort of flood from top of mind in terms of sex. I didn't really want to get up here and talk about sex really lamely and then just run away and show a whole lot of work. So I've tried to sort of tell a story about where sex sort of operates in my practice. As Jeremy said, I've got a practice called Work Art Life, and it's in Balaclava, and I'll talk about that later. But I'm a graphic designer with, we probably need a bit more light.
Sorry.
Not that much light. It's pretty dark though. It's actually quite appropriate for sex too, if you think about it. Particularly when you get my size, you really need the lights down. So just to jump into it, if you're afraid of nudity and sexual references, I would invite you to leave now. I don't want to be abused afterwards. I've been asked to talk about sex, so I've tried where possible to be a bit like Noel Coward, be quite suggestive, but there is sex there, so if you don't like it, get out. So, as we well know, sex is fundamental to life. However, I don't think, and it sort of exists everywhere, and it's been around forever, really. I also have to say too that I've only rehearsed this talk 3 times, and that was on the train, but also without slides. So please bear with me. So it's everywhere, and it's in our culture. But I don't think in the communication world, sex is such a great idea. And I've got a couple of examples here of what's this? Here's a labeler and a girl in a bunny suit sort of advertising things. In Playboy, Minolta sort of thinks it's a great idea to get a girl with their top off and promote selling cameras. We all know about this. We might turn the lights down a bit, do you reckon? Or do you need it, Mr. Cameraman? It does help, because you can't really see those images. And we know about Terry Richardson, of course. He's completely changed our sort of thoughts about sex. Sex, in one way, is, I think, an opportunity for us to take our mind off things. It's also, for some, it's an income and a living, whether they're in control or being exploited. It's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for a new generation. Sex also can be fun, as we know, and it's one of the great things about being young particularly, or if you decide to get married several times. Certainly, new love is what it's all about. That's why my mum's been married about 5 times. It's all about that sort of first moment. And, sex can be fun for all sorts of people too. Sex can also be art, and I'm very interested when we start talking about sex in terms of art, because it's a really important narrative about our discovery and who we are as people and so forth. And it exists in all sorts of spaces. That's me shaking, by the way, or it's an earthquake. Wow, it's when you go down that stairs. It can be quite confronting, and it's been a real pity in the last few months the last few years, how sex and the idea of all sorts of age groups sort of growing up with that idea, it's being censored out of our lives, and it's happening a lot in photography right now. You can't go into any public space without someone telling you to pull that camera down, and it's a real shame, because in a way we're censoring our world. And it can sort of push art too. This is some works done by Yanni I forgot his name, Tillerman, who sort of exploit things. Sex is also, as we know, a business, and it's a massive business. The print completely revolutionised sex, but the internet has made it explode. It's just crazy looking at this infographic. You know, what does it say here? 25% of all search engine requests are pornographic related. It's sort of pretty scary. And we've all had exposure to it, whether we like to admit it or not. And of course, it starts to sort of, you know, because it's such a massive influence in our lives, it has to start to creep through to advertising and so forth. Sorry if I'm in one direction too, by the way. This is by Tom Ford. And it starts to also become engendered in our culture. When you start to see your kids twerking, I've got kids that are 8 and 10, and when they start twerking, you know, sex is something that you need to address as an idea rather than sort of leave in the dark sort of rooms of your own mind. So as I said, yesterday at around about 10 o'clock, I was rung up to sort of talk about sex, and I was going to turn it down because, one, I'm not a morning person at all. I don't get into work till about 10:30. Andrew doesn't wake till around about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I went to bed this morning at 3, so I tend to sort of very much rely on that other end of sleep while people are getting ready for the day and walking around being chirpy. You know, I'm asleep. It was funny on the train too, watching people, you know, go to work in the morning. They don't look all that happy, I've got to say. Suck shit, that's what I reckon. Anyway, so it's a big dilemma for me. And look, I suppose sex, you know, is something that's not, in my 25 years of practice, hasn't featured in my work very much at all. And I suppose I try to find a couple of examples here where it might feature. This is a poster series I did in '98, and this is about as close as I get. Or even, and this is now 12 years ago, this is a photograph I took for the Australian Graphic Design Association Awards in 2002. And it's about as close as I will get to talking about sex. Because as I said, I'm a bit like Noel Coward. I'm a bit of a prude with it. I think it's something that it's not a great idea in commercial practice. It's something that you keep in your dark spaces, and it's something for you. As Norman Rockwell said, you know, in graphic design, and I know that people sort of say that, you know, sex sells, but he sort of said this idea that if you put a dog on something, if your image doesn't work, put a dog on it, and if the image still doesn't work, put a bandage on it. And look, I kind of get that. You know, I get the idea of dogs, and I get the idea of cute, and this is a thing I've just done recently for doggets. And give me a sort of silly dog any day, and I'll sort of throw it in front of you. But you know, something like this, you know, it doesn't push my buttons. And even though it's very much talking about potentially maybe safe sex or all that sort of thing, as far as I'm concerned, you know, the idea of you know, like as I said, the idea of sex is a private thing for me, and I just don't think it should really come out in practice. And it's sort of, after a while, it becomes a bit like that, you know, dog adage: if you can't sort of make an image work, put a couple having sex, and if it still doesn't work, put a dumb idea of someone giving a blowjob into an ad. And I still think that doesn't work as a sort of concept. So I think the thing about sex and design is that sex plus design is an easy idea, and I think a lot of people fall back on it and they think it's really clever at the time. I think it's a very youthful thing to do when you're 27 and you've got sort of lots of hormones running through your body and you're sort of going through that whole sex discovery thing. Yes, sex does sort of feature quite deeply in your work, but in the end, I think there's better ways of telling a story, and you know, sex and design for me is just an easy idea. So really at that point, I was just going to give up my talk and walk out of here and go back to bed. But then I kind of had to think about it, and I sort of thought at many levels, even though sex doesn't feature in my work, it's the stuff that surrounds sex that is very much part of my work, and that idea of desire and connection and experience. I think that's what makes life sexy. It's not the actual act itself. It's actually quite ugly. I remember seeing my brother having sex for the first time, and it just looked like this strange 8-legged monster just thumping away in my bedroom. It was just odd. But the whole idea of being attracted to someone, or the whole idea of desiring something, or the whole idea of the experience of it is something really important to me and important in my work. So my studio is pretty much about this. It's sort of split into 3 sort of modes of operation. I work for clients. I have a job. I work at Monash and I teach design and so forth at times. And I'm also involved in product and developing product. And the product side of my work has been an area that's just completely opened my mind to the potential of great communication and the potential of great ideas. And it started in spaces like this. This is the Islington market. It's a very dark shot. It's very moody. It was on a rainy day, I'm sorry, but it was the last thing I could find that talked about the market. But, it's a very evocative and lively space, and it's a space that I've wanted to participate into for a while, because over 25 years I've worked with so many different people, and they always come in and they've got these amazing ideas, and then they run off and make a fortune, and it's because they're brave. They jump into something and they have a go, and they create a product and they create an idea and they have an intent. So I wanted to do that too, and a lot of time in the next coming months, a lot of things that I'll be working on will be based on developing product. I'm frankly getting pretty bored with graphics. It sort of sometimes feels like Groundhog Day when you sent another brief to do a new brand, because nothing's really new, is it, really? But the thing about the market, though, is that I've learned a couple of things. Just because you make something, it doesn't mean it's going to sell, and that's something that I've learned from developing product. I think there's also nothing more humbling than making a product and putting it out there. When a product fails, you can't give it away. What's been fantastic about selling stuff is that you put it, you come up with this amazing idea, and you make it and you put it out there, and then suddenly, you put it out in front of people, and if people don't want to pick it up and buy it, they don't, and it's just bad luck. And for me, it's just such a defining space. But when a market works, I think it's like it's better than sex. Having a complete stranger come up, pick up one of your objects, they consider it, the light goes green in their head, and then suddenly they reach for their wallet and they make the transaction. I can't tell you that moment is gold. And I would recommend that all of us get into that space, because it makes us truly understand what it is to be relevant about your work and the work you make. An artist is nothing without an audience. A product is nothing without a market. So this is called the purchase funnel, but lessons in life management. But because I've been selling stuff, I'm really interested in what is the process, what are the steps that people take when they're buying a product. And this is basically it. They become aware, they get interested, the desire takes them, and suddenly they make a transaction, they make a purchase. And I think where we can make the biggest difference, and where I try to make the biggest difference with my work, and that's from whether it's graphic design or having a job or getting up here and speaking, is that idea of desire. Desire is the thing that really gets people going. Desire is that thing that makes people travel across town to buy something. It makes them forego eating to have something. It's an incredible emotion, and it's something that I really try to capture in the work that I do. So, I think there's several ways that my work works on that notion of desire. There's that sort of sense of association, and that's about creating a sort of association or stimulating a moment. There's humour, and it's about the idea of making people laugh. Obviously, inspiration, people projecting themselves and seeing themselves as part of that product. Beauty, People love beauty and they will always aspire to beauty, whether it be a person or an individual. And then there's this sort of notion of connection. You make things desirable by the connections you make. So I'm going to talk about these things, and there's some examples of my work. I put Ryan up because, you know, if I was to go the other way and if he came in my life, I'd be there. Look at him. He's funny, he's sexy, he's in amazing films, like he was in Drive. He was in Lars and the Real Girl, yeah. That Notebook film, forget it. But what a guy, well, how versatile, but how desirable is that guy? He just reeks of it. But, you know, it's the idea of Ryan. It's not doing it with Ryan. It's the idea of Ryan that I'm sort of interested in, I suppose, in communicating with that with my work. And also interested in Ryan and leaving my wife and family. So here's a couple of projects that sort of look at the idea of how I use association. 3D design, is any guys here from 3D design? No, good. They think I use too much pink. They think I use too many cliches and I use too many crosses, but I don't care. I think pink pushes people's buttons and familiar makes people excited. So it's throughout all of my work, whether it be a product, whether it be an invitation, whether it be something cute. Flowers, for God's sake, they make people feel good. Give them. And if I can put a poster on pink, I'll do it because it makes people excited. That's why old guys wear pink shirts. It makes them feel young. Humour. I worked with this guy called Rick Nelms, and I worked with him 10 years ago, and he was one hell of an ugly guy. He really wasn't an attractive man. But what made him the most desirable man in the world was that he was funny as hell. And if you think about, say, Jack Black or Seth Rogen or even Will Ferrell, they're not overly attractive people, but it's the way that they look at life and it's the stories they tell. And humour for me is a very, very important factor of my work. I like to make people smile, I like to make people laugh, and it's a really hard thing to do. And this is a couple of ads I've just made recently for Alliance Française, which I hope entice people to learn French, be it real French or fake French. Can you turn it up?
Le left au droit.
Snails from the garden.
T'es la chienne, hein? La chienne.
I like eating daffodil. Actually, I don't eat us.
Bonjour.
D'ailleurs, non?
Yes. Je m'appelle Louis.
Tu so romantique.
Because it is sexy.
Ooh la la.
Je suis Australian.
These are all real people that have their own fake accent. It was really brave of that client to do that. I couldn't believe that a place that prides itself on teaching correct French would be brave enough to take a gag and go with it. And the great thing about this gag was that sometimes you meet people that are into what you are into, but sometimes they're into it even more. And these two guys, James and Adam, they pretty much spend half their time thinking in French and trying to be normal people, and we had to just capture them.
Condiment, le jette pas. Ze gaan vachement. Le pays quitte. Le mange-le. Je m'en quelque fois un peu, je m'en pas. Donc je me.
What is that? Grundy. I don't know.
What's that?
Nothing. I don't speak French. Sorry.
Je le veux, ils ont pas bien écrit les paroles de jeu.
Those ads were screened at the last Alliance Française French Film Festival, and I've never sat in an audience and had someone applaud a project I've worked on unsolicited, ever. And when I watched the film, it was a pretty kind of average film, I have to say, but in fact it was a complete waste of time. But the whole thing of sitting in an audience and people seeing that ad and talking about it, and then it was shown twice in the screening, and then applauding afterwards was, it completely took my breath away, and thought, it made me think that it's absolutely where we're at. Desire is where we're at. So inspire. The next thing, much of my work is about the idea of just inspiring simple actions. And if you think as 3D will probably sort of say again, if you think that my work is full of cliche, it is, because cliches connect with people and they inspire people. So in terms of love and romance and sex, my work is littered with love. It's littered with gestures about things that are about desire. It's in brands, it's in apparel, it's in ads. It's been a massive theme. It's on the side of buildings. It's something that has driven a lot of success with the people I've worked with, and it's one thing I just can't walk away from. It's if you want to make people feel good, make them feel loved. Even in dark, weird posters, there's love. Cafe brands. Here's another one. Quick. There you go. So, the last point I was going to talk about is the idea, the second last point is this idea of beauty. People love beautiful things, and fashion is the exploration of beauty. Beauty is also the exploration of ourselves. And these are a couple of projects I worked that looked at beauty. For Saxton a few years ago, I was asked they wanted to get into fashion, they wanted to sort of get more people printing, onto Saxton, fashion-based projects. So I had to respond with a sort of bunch of diaries and so forth that talked about fashion, and by no means am I experienced. Like, I'm not as experienced in luxury as 3D or Fabio Ingrato, and I was kind of flawed with what I was going to do with this project. So what I did was, rather than looking at the clothes and trying to outdo the fashion people, I addressed the idea of beauty. And this was done, this is 2006. But what we did is we convinced the client again to commission a professional model, which is on the left there, with a girl we found on Greville Street, and we put them in the same clothes, we put them in the same environment, and we documented this response to beauty. So these are some of the photographs. And as you'll see, there's obviously a natural beauty to the girl on the left, but as you get more familiar with the girl on the right, there is a warmth there that you can't possibly get as a professional, because it gets bashed out of you, because you've got to, you're selling yourself, you're not there to be desired. And it was sort of ironic when this promotion went through, when we were doing the shoot in the day, the model had 4 or 5 looks, blue steel, tough guy, whatever. And the girl on the left was just herself, and she carried it really well. And by the end of the shoot, she was as confident and as interesting, if not more interesting, than the person on the right. We also did that. We did it with 2 sets of molds, so there was a sort of more of a classic kind of look, and then we went for a more street look. But this is 2006, so please forgive me. But you'll see they're same, like completely different sort of expressions, but same situation, but different responses or desirable responses. And it's kind of it's not ironic that when you speak to the guy, when I spoke to the guys that they'd produced 5,000 of these diaries, and when they took them out to the street, the girls on the right were the diaries that people gravitated to. They tend to leave the girl on the left to be, but she ran out first. The real people ran out first, which I found quite interesting. I suppose another project that I work on, and I've been doing for the last 10 years, explores beauty, but in a different way. It's about this idea of what is the incarnation of a girl that's not about sex, a girl that is sexy but not about being slutty or tarty. And this journey that I've had with So Frenchy So Chic has been a really interesting discovery in what are those things that push buttons for girls in a sort of French context. So we've commissioned a range of illustrators over the years. Kat McLeod, who's on Jackie Winter's book still. Jeremy? Yeah. Beck Wetzler, and we've got a new one this year which I can't announce. But it's been a really important journey for me in terms of understanding, the psychology of it's talking about desire at that level that's sexy but not, not lustful. And you'll see here it's about the way, it's about the pose, it's about the aloofness, it's about the fineness of features. It's not about the bust line or the legs or the red lips or things. It's a more sensitive thing, it's a more sensual thing. And in essence, I think a more desirable thing. I think Kat did that cover on the left. I think it was her second last cover. And it sort of verges into being really sexy, but at the same time, it just holds back. It's like surfing a massive wave and then pulling back at the right time. It really sort of has that beautiful balance. And I think that's something that's really important in creating work that's desirable. It's about finding balance. This is the latest cover from last year from Beck. And the last thing I was going to talk about is connection. Great ideas bring people together, and also great ideas have the potential of becoming the fabric of people's stories. As a studio, I work on a range of sort of public projects, and they're designed to sort of create new thoughts and actions. And this is a project I worked on a few years ago. I didn't do it last year because I just got over it. But I just sort of felt that Valentine's Day was being taken over by card companies, and I thought there was a massive opportunity just to get back to the very essence of, what Valentine's Day is about, which is about, putting a thought out there about somewhere. It's about sort of being brave. It's about, capturing that sort of sense of excitement. It's about, a sort of sense of discovery about a new person or putting yourself out there. And I remember at school writing cards to particular persons and signing them anonymously, and it was just an enormous sort of rite of passage for me. And I sort of felt that it was important to maybe do this as a public project. So for 3 years I ran on Valentine's Day. I used to get up again at really bloody early hours, like sort of sticking up A3 posters throughout the city. I did roughly 1,000 poll posters on the night before Valentine's Day. It was an enormous effort again, but I was just really interested in the idea of propositioning something to the market and the space and the community that's more than just selling shit. So these are sort of like I call this series the sort of more the icon sort of series. The year before I got lyrics from songs and put them up. The first year I did it was such a bummer. It was the night before the St Kilda Festival. So I was up from, I think it was 1 till 4 in the morning putting these things up all across town. And I don't know if you've ever done any stick-ups or anything like that before, but it's really scary because you can get booked. It's illegal, as the graffiti guys will tell you. It's a lot of effort and a lot of mental sort of preparation you need to go through to put these bloody things up. So I did from 1 till 4 in the morning putting these things up, and I come back the next day thinking, cool, Balaclava's going to be a spray of something different, or it's just selling cards and flowers and chocolates. And because it was a St Kilda Festival, I think the companies like Rock Posters are allowed to do illegal post-ups because they also control what everyone else is doing. So what happened was it was a new run of posters, and all the posters I put up, all the 1,000 posters I put up the night before were completely torn down and put in the bin and gone. There was not one poster to be seen. It was all torn down. So it was kind of pretty annoying. So last year I just sort of made sure I spoke with God, and we moved Valentine's Day so it didn't sort of coincide with the St Kilda Festival. And these are some of the examples. This is the last year I did it. But what was really nice about this project is that friends and designers did pick up the idea. It was, they made their own sort of interactions about Valentine's Day, which was really terrific. The last project I'm going to talk about is just the idea of product itself. As I said, I work on a range of cards. I've also just released a magazine called A Magazine for Now. And this idea is about putting out products that make design, make my work part of people's lives. And this is the latest range that was done this year, that was showcased at Supergraph. And as much as 3 Deep would probably cringe again at the sort of size, the obviousness of that red heart, I can't tell you how many of those red hearts that I sell. It's defining. For every other card I sell, I'll sell 20 of those red hearts, and to all sorts of people. So I don't care what 3 Deep says. It's great. Cliches do work. And that one, the one with the rainbow too, that sells. I've got a story about that one. The lemons sell to particular people, and the rainbow hearts sell to particular people too. People love just really simple things in life, simple gestures, simple ideas, simple things they're familiar with. This latest series, I think, more appeals to hipsters. I don't know whether it's sold, all that well, but it's all about having a go and sort of, pushing the buttons. These guys, like the hearts, I sell gazillions of them. The farting dog is one of the most popular ones with women of all ages because they all have a partner that farts and they think, haha, isn't that cute? There's just a lot of mad cat people out there, and, God bless them, hey? And the card on the right with the it's called Hot Bird, that's inspired. I used to make cards a lot, and I made one last year for my partner Pip, and it was a hand-done version of Hot Bird, and she loved Hot Bird, and she said, can you make everyone feel the way you made me feel when you gave me Hot Bird? So, that's how it started. And it sort of moved into there, when people get married, they want a big freaking ring, don't they, And this has allowed me to sort of get into new spaces where I'm interacting, instead of interacting with the client, I'm interacting with the public, and the feedback and so forth I get from the public really helps me understand what triggers their desire and gets them really excited about work, and it's completely shifted the way I work. I used to, kind of be in this bubble and, think that, what I'm doing is relevant because I'm relevant, but if you've got no market, you're not relevant. And this is a great place to test it. A few weekends ago, I went to Bentley Market and battled with Russian Jewish ladies, at 7 a.m. wanting to buy my cards for 25 cents. They're going, cheap, 25 cents, not $5. And I'm going, go to hell, you can keep your 25 cents. But it's defining, getting up, presenting your work, presenting to a space, seeing what happens. And this is the groomed version of a stall. So, this is where my time is nearly up. I sort of think that I just wanted to leave you with the ideas about sex and what I think about sex in terms of communication. And I think the richer space is about pushing people's buttons. It's about making your work smile. It's about having a purpose to your work that's quite connected. It's about tempting, teasing and luring. It's sort of making your ideas other people's ideas. So I think forget sex. I think sex is a personal journey, but I think exploit desire. That's where the great creativity is at. Thanks a lot.